Welcome to Enlightened, the enlightened journey of life. I am your host, Jen Hamilton, and it is an honor to have you here. I am a conscious life coach and women's empowerment mentor, and I activate a potent level of self and soul inquiry with my clients, which initiates deep and lasting transformation in all areas of their lives. I am here for the full human experience, authentically and audaciously sharing my magic with the world. On this podcast, we're all about mastering life on the way to enlightenment. And as we are here having a human experience, we might as well embrace it all. We play in the space of what is real and tangible, just as much as we play in the space of esoteric and metaphysical. You'll be ignited by deep conversation, whether through my own personal musings, interviews with incredible thought leaders around the world, and everyday divine humans sharing their soulful stories. Thank you for being on this journey. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful soul. Just to let you know that listener discretion is advised for this episode and to be mindful if there are kids around, as it contains adult themes. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Enlightened podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Robin Thomas. Robin is a teacher, coach, healer, and founder of Phoenix Rising Healings and Fierce Happiness Women Coaching. She is also a lead teacher and coach at the Rhys Institute of Energy Medicine. She is a self-help, a personal transformation junkie, and enjoys collecting certificates and degrees. Robin is passionate, enthusiastic, playful, and deeply irreverent. She is also a contributing author to the anthology Joy on Demand, Choosing Healthy Habitual Happiness. Robin believes wholeheartedly in the value of play and fervently enjoys calling forth playmates willing to dive deep into what it means to be fully alive. In this episode, you will hear us dive super deep into shadow work, inner child healing, our views of the world and God and religion and all sorts of incredible things. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Enlightened podcast. And today I have the amazing Robin Thomas from Phoenix Rising Healings joining me for a chat. Welcome, Robin.
Hi, how are you? It's really good to be here, Jen.
I'm so excited that we're connecting through this time and space, through the airwaves, to be able to have some incredible conversation. And before you and I jumped on this podcast, you were saying you had just stepped out of a healing. So I'd love to hear what that was all about, because you were just absolutely buzzing. And I think I've caught what you were downloading, because I feel even more excited than I was jumping on here.
Right? It was just, so I did this group healing, and I did a free healing because, you know, when we're recording this, we're right heading into like the holiday season. So we just did this amazing group healing where I had like 9 or 10 people online, and I had a bunch of other people sort of watching it. So like it was this really powerful group healing, and we did this like anti-stress reducing factory reset. But at one point I was just holding this beautiful space, and I watched like the guides take this like black shit out of the planet. Like we just lifted all of this stuff out of the planet, and I watched them take it up and transmute it, and like the whole planet got lighter, and it was amazing.
Oh my God, I love it. You are speaking my language. Thank you. And thank you for your service. Thank you for doing this, you know, for the planet, for humanity, because we can change the world with our thoughts, with
Absolutely.
Our intentions, like we really can. And we'll touch on so much of that today. And now you're a happiness coach, spiritual teacher, and healer. Robin,
Yes.
Tell us all about you. What does that even look like? What does a happiness coach do?
Well, so a happiness coach, really what I call myself a happiness coach because I really truly ascribe to what I call fierce happiness. But I also call myself a happiness coach because what I do is like inner child work and some deep like spiritual excavation of like some deep shit. So, but if I said, let's dive in and clear out the shit that's holding you back, coach, people would be like, yeah, no, I'm kind of all set. But when I call myself a happiness coach, they're like, oh, I want to be happy. Tell me more. Right? So it just invites conversation.
I love that, isn't it? That's, yeah, if you had like, let's move all the dark energy shit from your life, coach, and be like,
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go over here.
Exactly.
I love it. How long have you been in this space for, and how did you get into it?
Well, so I mean, I have been a personal development transformation junkie for like all my adult life, right? So I've been doing this work for 25 years at least. I've been a coach since 2010, and I've been a happiness coach full time as my full time happiness coach gig. That's been since 2020, so it's been about 2.5 years.
Amazing. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is shadow work?
Yeah, so shadow work is, so what shadow is the places that we judge, the places that we find that someone in our lives or we judged as wrong or bad or not okay. So those parts of ourselves get shunted. They get shunted into the closet or the junk drawer. And now we're spending all of our time and energy trying to keep that. Well, I don't want that. And I definitely don't want that. And I don't want this either. So now we're like hemmed in, trying so desperately not to be those things that we kind of are. And so shadow work is one, acknowledging that these parts of us exist, and then recognizing that some of them are strengths, but there's nothing wrong or bad in them. So it's finding compassion for who we are as we are, without the judgment and bullshit that holds us back.
I love it. I love it so much. And I've done so much shadow work myself. And like, you totally hit the nail on the head. It's the stuff that we don't want to look like, or we try to push it down or put it in the closet.
Or it's unconscious.
Exactly. Yeah. It's deep seated in there. And in your professional opinion, like working with people all day, every day in this, what are some of the things that you're finding are perhaps a pattern or more coming to the surface now as far as people's shadows that are coming through?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of ancestral stuff coming up right now. There's a lot of healing of the ancestral wounds. There's like, I listened to a podcast with Dr. Galit Atlas, and she wrote this book called Emotional Inheritance. And it's basically like, it's not just our stuff. It's like it's our parents' stuff and our grandmother's stuff and like generations. So that's, I see so much ancestral wounding coming through. I see a lot of like the shadow stuff that's around being a woman in society, right? Most of my clients are women. So it's just around the feminine energy. Those are sort of global patterns that I see, and then more often it's that like not good enough, having to work like people pleasing, trying really hard to do something, be something that you're not. Well, I will always be this, or I will never be that. So I have a lot of that sort of not good enough bullshit that comes up for a lot of my clients.
Yes, you've totally hit the nail on the head there. And we're seeing such a movement for women at the moment to really step into their feminine power. And I work with women to unleash their inner goddess. And that, that includes doing the shadow work, doing the inner child healing. It's going into those parts that we say, hang on a second, something's not right here. Something is holding me back, whether it's cultural, whether it's through religion, whether it's just through sort of general upbringing, what they've learned in the systems that we've been born into, such as the education system. But we see a lot of ancestral wounds that have come through. I find, as women, we bring a lot through on our mother's side, because obviously, we carry 7 generations of DNA within our body. And so we carry all of that cell memory with us of, famine, war, patriarchy, religion. Like, we have got so much within our systems that, generally this shit isn't even ours.
Right. And most of the time it isn't ours. And we don't even necessarily know that why we would react a certain way isn't ours. We just inherently assume it's our fault, there's something wrong with us, it's something we have to fix or heal. And the ancestors have there's some incredible wisdom that's also been handed down through the line. But you're right that the stuff that's like the oppression and I think so we've had the oppression of women for millennia, but that has also skewed the masculine energy so far. So we've got like toxic masculinity and oppressed femininity. So we're all healing these like generational patterns, and we're talking 7 generations, but we're talking like millennia of the exile of the Shekinah, the feminine principle, right? So
yes.
ancient.
Yes. I remember being in a medicine ceremony, a plant medicine ceremony a couple of years ago, and it was my first experience with the Australian version of ayahuasca. So we call it Aussiehuasca. But I remember through my journey, I like a part of me, as I sort of came through the journey, I remember just feeling all of my ancestors behind me, and I was roaring in ceremony. I'm like, we are not okay. This is fuck. We are not okay. And I was just like, I was the loud person in ceremony at that time, and I totally wore it. And then like coming out of working, with plant medicine and having this experience, I'm like, okay, how do I bring this into human form to support women to move through this? And it's like, how do I now take that, all of that oppression, all of that anger, all of that rage, but actually turn it into power, not from anger that I want to fight, but how can I fight without the anger? How can I make a stand for women? How can I make a stand within myself? What is it that I need to teach my daughter? What is it that I need to teach the other women that come into my field? And in my view of the world, this is the rise of the divine feminine, because it's all within us. It's our feminine from within saying enough is enough. We are rising through the pain. We're rising beyond it. We're not here to fight with the masculine. No. We're not here to go to war. We are here to rise in love, to rise in peace, to rise in pleasure. To step into our fullest potentials. And for me, like, that is the goddess. That is like, I have a necklace that says goddess. I run goddess programs. I work with women to unleash their goddess, because it's that reminder that everyone has that energy within them. And that, like, essentially that's just a label. You can call it whatever you want. It's divine feminine essence. You can call it your womanhood, whatever it is that you want to call it. But it's that exploration of who you are. And we don't get to completely rise without letting the shit go. Like, we can't be held down by the shadows and the density that is the trauma of our past. It might not even be ours, as we've said. It could be, it could be great grandmothers.
Exactly. And we have so many more opportunities than they did. We have so much more ability to say what we're for and not what we're right. So we have, it's almost like we have all of the generations behind us saying, do this for us too, right? Thank you. So I had a similar experience where I got to experience like the mother line all the way back almost to origin, right? Like, I really got to experience that like long line of the matriarchal line, and like I got to feel their wisdom come through me, and their pride, and also the pain and suffering. And I just was like, let's just take it all out. Let's take keep the wisdom and let go of the pain. And I did some ho'oponopono, and I really was like, thank you for this gift. And my guides helped me take it out. So I really got to like feel that sort of long line of women feminine energy. It was neat. So you talk about that sacral rage. I felt that. I was like, yes. It's such an incredible time to be alive. And, I personally believe in soul contracts, that we come into this lifetime, with a, set of guidelines and things that we want to be able to do. And of course we have free will, along the way, yeah, of course we do.
Which is part of the journey. But I also believe, like, I, for some reason put my hand up and said, I'll do it. I'll come down. I'll start, healing some of this stuff backwards and forwards. So we kind of have to go through the stuff to be able to heal. I always say, feel it to heal it. And so, apparently I signed up for this gig, and that's what I'm here to do. And that's why I'm doing this work. Even though sometimes it's wildly uncomfortable, but, wildly rewarding at the same time. I really just want to touch on just something that you said there, the ho'oponopono, that has been in my field for a little while. And can you tell our listeners what the ho'oponopono is?
Yeah, so ho'oponopono it's an ancient Hawaiian practice of forgiveness. And what that means is, so to make pono is to be comfortable in your skin, right? So when you're pono, it's like all is right with the world. So if you're pono, now I'm right and you're right. All is right in the world. We're both comfortable. So what you're really doing is you're making all right twice. So ho'oponopono. And what that what that means is that you're getting into the space of there's no animosity, there's no anything, you get back into what's called a zero state. You get back into this like really truly space of who you are, you and the divine, with nothing between you. And it's
I love that.
Yeah, right? It's so powerful. It's so crazy powerful. And it's 4 simple phrases. It's, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And that's it, right? And you can feel that you really want to feel the energy of that. You want to feel like I love you as a human, as a being, as a soul in this plane with me. Or I love you. I'm sorry that I gave you a space to give this energy to me. I'm sorry I allowed this to happen. I'm sorry I whatever my energy is that called it from you. Please forgive me. Thank you. Thank you for showing me. Thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for allowing me to heal. It's so powerful.
I love it. I used to have it on my wall on a card, and I used to read it. And sometimes I'd be like, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry. Like I was doing something ragey. Yes. And you say it over and over again until like the actual meaning of it really just drops into your being, because you get to have we're here to have the full human experience. So we get to have the rage, the anger, the frustration, the annoyance, the want to throw shit at the wall feelings.
And you have to feel all of that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that the Ho'oponopono, we meet ourselves there. We meet ourselves in there, and we come to that center point, which is, to me, that's the connection with the divine. It's the heart space. It's the space between the polarity and the duality. It's the space where only love exists. And to me, that's the space where I connect with my higher self, or the divine, my goddess self, whatever I want to call it. Right, and it's so beautiful that there's actually would you call it a prayer, or is it an affirmation?
So it's Ho'oponopono they call it a prayer. The Ho'oponopono prayer is what I've heard it referred to as. I don't necessarily think it is a prayer, but I do think that prayer is communion with the divine, right? So I think that communion with the divine, the I love you, is that, right? I'm sorry, please forgive me. Because ultimately you're saying to God, I'm sorry, I forgot that there's only love in the world. Please forgive me. I love you. There is only love. And thank you for the reminder, because it is, I used to do this in the mirror when I couldn't even look at myself in the eyes. And I just would be like, I would say Ho'oponopono, and I couldn't say I love you. I could be like, I like you. You'll do. You don't suck. You're all right. Right. So, but I used to force myself to get there, because it was like a prayer of me meeting my divine, or, meeting God. And so I really do think that's why they call it a prayer, but it's more of a mantra than anything.
Then that's the thing. So prayer, mantra, affirmation, whatever feels good. It was funny because I've only recently restarted using the word God again after doing some deep inner healing around, my experience through religion. I've actually, done a podcast episode on this. It was actually called What is Spirituality? And I speak about my experience, growing up in a Catholic church, and then like just my complete aversion to the word God and prayer and anything that had to do with church. I was like, nope, get me out of here. Like I'm not there.
And there's such latent words. There's such depth of they are triggering, right? God, prayer, right? Those are some deep words, because of, I don't want to say how spirituality it's been bastardized a little bit by some of the organized religions, right? Yeah, I hear you, and sometimes it's like the divine or the universe, because it's like more accessible than let's say God. But and I don't think of God as like some off-planet dude with a beard, right? Like that's just it, right? God is the all. It's the one. It's the mother and father all together, right? I don't think of God as a he. It's a they, right? So it's like, yeah.
Religion absolutely, in my view of the world, has a lot to answer for in this regard, because I actually grew up thinking that from going to church from such a young age, I used to think our priest from the church, I thought he was God, because he was the one delivering the church ceremony. He was the one delivering the communion and stuff. I was just like, oh, that guy must be God. I'm here to listen to stuff about God, and he's saying it. He's the one up there in a white robe. Surely that's God. And then the fact that it is referred to as a he for so long, And then, an aversion to, men in general for a little while there. And because of the association I had with God and, that inner masculine wounding that I, have recently discovered was there because of my relationship with God, the divine. Just moving through all that kind of stuff has been such a game changer for me. Like, it's really like the fact that I'm even mentioning God on a public platform. Me a year ago to be like, the fuck is she on about? Future me, what have you done?
What the hell? I get it. And frankly, there are times that I'll refer to God as God and I'll refer to God as the goddess or the great mother. And it's like interchangeable, right? Based on what, but I had that same sort of masculine wounding that's like, I don't want a God as the father. I'm like, no, that's not, no. Right.
And it's funny because in Christianity, in Catholic, we say Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Like, everything points to it being male. Yet if we're like talking, about the creator, I'm pretty sure it's me with a vagina that creates life. Like,
exactly. Right. So there has to be a mother involved.
Exactly. It's actually one of my favorite topics now to talk about, because it's like, oh my gosh, like for so long, the wounding, that I had. And then, essentially because the God, that we were taught about in Catholicism and, through that whole experience through school, I went to a Catholic school, I went to a Catholic church, learning that that's the father. I then grew up with daddy issues, and then that actually turned into like, fuck the patriarchy, fuck the government, which is actually a byproduct of daddy issues. So I found out, and I was like, all right, so I've got to heal the father wound and the God wound in order to heal the patriarchy. She's, oh, okay. Which actually was another medicine ceremony that I did as well. Like, that was one that I did earlier this year that was like really, really profound in my healing journey. And so it's just, everyone's on a journey, aren't they? With their version of God, the divine, the creator.
And whatever that is for you, spirit, or whatever that is, the universe, I don't care what it is, but having a relationship with something that is bigger than we are, I do feel like that's a part. I mean, spirituality is the path to happiness, but I think that's like, it's so necessary to get to that trusting, surrendered place. And you can't be in a surrendered place unless there's a belief in some kind of higher power. Even if it's your higher self.
Exactly. It's like, what are we surrendering to? What is it? Like, I feel like I've got to a point in my life, I'm like, I can hand this over. I can ask for help. I can, remember that I can only control what I can control, and everything else that's out of my control is a choice to surrender. And every time I go through the process where I realize that I'm gripping so tightly and then I'm called to surrender, and then I let life in, and it's like, oh, fuck, that's right. I can just be. I'm a human being, not a human doing. I get to experience the balance, the polarity, the duality of the human experience, that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience and I'm a human being having a spiritual experience. It's both of it. We can't just, and in saying that, we can't just spiritually bypass the human experience as well.
Right.
And I mean, the whole point of this podcast, the reason it's called Enlightened, is to have the enlightened journey of life. Like, there's so many people that just like, oh, how do I get to enlightenment? And it's like, hang on,
let's lot of work every day. Right.
Like, let's live life along the way. And that's why I love having these conversations, because I'm in no rush to get to enlightenment. So, like, to me, enlightenment would be the equivalent of like getting to the end of like a Sega Master System 2 game that like you finished it and you're like, yeah, well, I'm done now. I collected all the coins. I went all into like the hidden things. I did all of the things that, and I'm done. I'm loving the human experience. I did a post on Instagram the other day and I'm like, I fucking love peonies. They're my favorite flower. And I saw some in the shops the other day. My face lit up. I'm like, oh my God, I need this in my life. And I bought them and I had them on my bedside. And I remember sitting at a medicine ceremony once and I was thinking about the peonies and I was like, oh my God, if I wasn't human, I wouldn't be able to smell And so
Right.
every time I smell peonies or any flowers, I'm like, that's right. I am human. I am here to have a human experience and, be one with nature, experience all that the earth has to offer me. But I'm getting so caught up in the shit of life, the having to make money, having to be here, having to do that, having to have all the stuff and the things and the bigger and the better and the more of and the latest of. It's like, hang on, I'm so out of touch with what I'm actually here for that I need to come back to my essence, come back. And honestly, smelling peonies brings me back. It is my anchor. And
I love that.
Like I don't know about, I mean, you're in Boston. I don't know. Do you have mangoes over there in the summertime? Is that a fruit?
We do.
I mean,
yes, they're imported, but yes, absolutely. We have mangoes. I love mangoes, but yeah.
So the first mango of the summer season for me is just like a mouth orgasm. It's like, oh my God, I've been waiting 6 months for you, since the last lot were available. And it's like, oh my God, that's right. We're cyclical beings. We only get this fruit in a certain time of the year. Or, the papaya or figs. Oh my gosh, I can't find figs that are like ripe yet. And I just can't wait to get a fig into my face hole in the next little while because of what figs do for me.
I love it. I feel that I feel that way about apples in the fall, because obviously I'm in New England, and so apples in the fall, that crisp, juicy, tart apple, like I feel that same way about that. And we are headed into winter, we just had fall, so right, so that my favorite season, I come alive, the fall, that crisp, the leaves and changing and the loamy scent of the earth. I feel like it's exactly the same. And now as we come into winter, we're just about at the solstice, we're wintering. We're meant to go in. We're meant to be introspective. We are completely cyclical beings, and that's where we're meant to do these things. And I've learned, my gratitude practice now includes like being grateful for the darkness, being grateful for the sadness and the angst and the anger, because those are also human emotions. And I'm like, yes, this too, because I'm up leveling. And so I really have learned to breathe into not just the juiciness of the mango, but like the juiciness of like the pain of like longing.
Yes.
And it's pretty powerful.
It's so powerful. One of my favorite things to do to really just wake me up is to jump in like cold ocean water, especially in the winter time, because I mean, I'm a warm body. Like it is like 30 degrees Celsius here today. And I'm like, I'm good. Like I'm not too hot. I'm not cold. Like usually I feel the cold. So cold, I have such an aversion to. I would be horrendous over in Boston.
It's cold about 6 or 7 months of the year here. It really is rough.
And so like to wake my body up, to shock myself essentially back to life, it's like calling the crash cart for me, jumping into that cold ocean. It just wakes my soul up, and it's like, that's right, I'm human. Like, what am I doing with my life? Am I actually here experiencing what I want to experience in this very short time frame that I'm here? Or am I just fucking around? Am I just like, oh, I need the latest iPhone, or I need to get this? And, too much in the drive for the stuff and the things. And I've caught myself in it so much more regularly, like just having that conscious awareness of going, hang on a second, what is it I actually want from this lifetime?
Right. What do I want? And we're very good at saying what we don't want too, right? We're really good at saying what we don't want. And it's really more challenging to think about, well, what is it that you do want? And to be able to articulate that requires a real level of relationship with the self that I think that's part of the human experience, is what do we want in this lifetime?
Massively. And you're so right. I work with so many clients around this. They'll tell me what they don't want. I'm like, well, tell me what you do want. I call it the towards and away motivation. Are you trying to move away from what you don't want? And you're going to end up circling around back there again because you got just enough far away from it that you forgot how bad it was? Or is your attention and your energy flowing towards what you do want? Because ultimately, and that comes back down to our intention, doesn't it? Like we create with our intention, we create with our thoughts. We go in into flow with where our mind is. And if it's going to what we don't want, we're actually manifesting more of
calling
it.
it to us, because the universe doesn't understand the not. All it understands is your energy and attention and effort are going to this one thing, which is exactly brings us back to shadow work. When you're constantly saying, well, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that. That's what you're calling to yourself. And that's like, if we look at the planet right now, there's a million things of what we don't want, and shadow, especially in, I don't know, in America, where like we've got some deeply shadowed leaders. So like shit's really hitting the fan up here, because people are so like, no, so unconscious that we need to like turn the heat up really fucking high. So we're ready to jump out of the water.
Absolutely. And yes, no, I definitely feel for you guys over there with everything that's going on.
I saw a meme the other day that said something about, I wonder if Canada thinks it lives upstairs from the crackhead neighbors below. And I'm like, 100% they do.
I absolutely love that. That is,
oh my God, it was funny.
I love it. And one of the things, that you do in your line of work as well is inner child healing.
Yes.
And this is huge. I work with clients around inner child healing. And it's funny because it took me a couple of years before I actually said I'm going to work with people for inner child healing, because I was still going through my journey with it. And I had a pretty horrendous experience actually with a coach that I saw a few years ago, who on our first session together felt like she was trying to bludgeon my inner child out of me. And I went into full shutdown mode, unsafe, like literally, like it was like a child having a tantrum. And the biggest thing that it taught me is that how sensitive our little inner child is within.
Oh, God,
so
yes.
I'd love to hear from your perspective, if you can speak into what inner child healing is and why it is so important as part of our healing journey and shadow work.
Well, so I was listening to Gabor Mate is a brilliant psychologist, and he does so much work with trauma. And so I was listening to him, and I liked his definition. So he talks about trauma as any time we weren't allowed to be who we were, that who we were was taught, we were taught that who we are is not okay. So inner child work is not necessarily the trauma that happened, but our responses to it. What happens is something happens, and there's big T trauma, which is the trauma that, and little T trauma, which is, again, anytime you were told who you are is not okay. And we take that in. It just absorbs. And then years later, we're still telling our child that she's bad and wrong and awful and terrible and no good and rotten. So we're still constantly re-traumatizing. So now we're talking 30, 40, 50, however years of trauma. So the child needs so much love and compassion and tenderness that we just have to like love our little inner being. Like we just have to think of us as a 3 or a 4 or 5-year-old, and you just have to love. Like I have on my desk, I literally have a picture of myself at 2, because this is the reminder of who I'm talking to all the time. Like how are you going to talk to that? Right? So it's like, so inner child work requires infinite compassion and tenderness in order to be like, hey, I see you. It's totally okay. I got you. I'm going to make it safe for you from now on.
As soon as, like when I started doing inner child healing myself and just really dropped into it. And for me, that was probably one of the deepest shadows, because it was like, and first of all, like it felt really uncomfortable. I'm like, why am I talking to my little girl? Like, why am I referring it to like little me? And I remember like looking at photos, and I just broke, because I was like, oh, fuck. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
so sorry. And that's where we can bring in the Ho'oponopono, isn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly right. You look at that little girl. In fact, I do a class. I teach a bunch of classes. One of the classes I teach is an inner child class. And I teach one of the classes when we have that class is I always have them bring in a picture of themselves, a little picture. And I say, I want you to think about what you say to yourself on a daily basis, and think about that this is the person you're talking to. And they're always like, oh, and then we do some Ho'oponopono. And that's when I say, your job now is to reparent this little girl. Like your job is to keep her with you and to teach and to talk to her as if you were right, because that's who we are. So I do that with the Ho'oponopono, exactly, because it's so deep and it's so profound, and it has like that's a huge shift of energy.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? And I've at times, like, I've made my home screen on my phone like a picture of me as a little girl, and I get my clients to do that as well. And, we go through the things that we say to ourselves as adults. It's like, would you speak to a little child like this? Like,
right.
Robin, where did we fuck up? Where did we get this so fucking wrong? Where did it shift from being a child?
I think it comes from well-meaning, mostly well-intentioned adults who were totally unconscious themselves, who didn't have any teachings. I mean, we're the first generations that even are capable of healing, right? You talk about, like, before 1945, they didn't even have capacity for self-reflection in the same way that we do. So we're talking like our parents' generation, and then our generation, and then so it's like it's every successive generation is getting better, but we didn't actually. I don't know that we fucked up so much as that society just forgot who we are.
That's a big one, isn't it? My journey here on Earth, and especially working with different plant medicine, is, that remembering who I am. In fact, I run cacao ceremonies called Remember Who You Are, because it's, supports people to begin that journey. And you're right, like, we just didn't have that level of consciousness.
Right.
I'm super curious your perspective on, if we have this level of consciousness now and we're on this journey to healing, yet what we're seeing happening in the world through AI coming through, through, genetics being changed, all sorts of things. Do you think there's something at play that's going on to desensitize us, because people are starting to wake up, become more conscious, become more aware, and do this deeper healing? I'd love to hear what your version of this is.
I think that's a very interesting question. I feel like genetics, I really do think we're upgrading to a new humanity, right? So I think that our genetics is changing. We're actually changing as we do the healing. We're changing DNA, right? So I think that's true. In terms of, I feel like, I don't know that I think the AI stuff, I think the desensitization, I think is all still part of the same broken systems that do have to fall away. Like, we do have to have a sort of a complete destruction. Like, we have to go through the Kali destroyer in order to get to the rebirth, right? So it's like we're gonna be reborn, but we have to get rid of all of the systems that are fundamentally broken, and that's kind of everything. And I think the AI stuff is part of that, because I think technology is amazing, and we can work together, it can be an amazing partnership, and also we need to not let it take over, because then we become zombies, then we become addicted, then we become, right, it's an external focus again. So I do think we're almost at the concept of the 100th monkey, where like we're almost at the place where there's enough consciousness around that it'll just continue to go, but it's gonna get dark before it gets better, I think. I think it has
it's so true, isn't it? And I guess that's sort of why we signed up to be here. Yes. Grab the popcorn and see what happens, because even
exactly.
even in the last year, I feel like the AI movement it's just come more to light. It's possibly been around a lot longer than we know it to be. And obviously it's been happening behind the scenes. But it's like it's really just coming forward a lot at the moment. Like, we're seeing, things on social media, like this artwork that's going around at the moment, where you can, plug your photo in, and I'm like, people don't drink the Kool-Aid. Like,
right. Yes. And it's just like this cool, funky thing. And yet, yeah. So I think like things like Facebook and the metaverse, like, these are places that like they want to you're right, desensitize. And I do think that there's movements away from that, because that's just another addiction. It's just another way to stay unconscious. It's just another level of not going inward and having a relationship with self, because you can't have intimacy. Into me, I see. You can't have a relationship with someone else if you don't have a relationship with yourself. And so that's just one more way of showing us that we're not in relationship with ourselves. It's just, we're frogs in the water, and they just keep turning, the universe just keeps turning up the volume, turning up the heat to be like, are you gonna jump yet? You can jump yet? So some of us are like, can we jump? Can we jump? Like, what are we like?
It's such an interesting time to be alive, and I'm a people watcher. You know, I'm so fascinated by, you know, human psychology and human behavior, and you know, the trends that people sort of jump onto pretty quickly, or, you know, following the trends, following the masses, following it for the sake of it, and then sometimes we realize that we get caught in it, other times we don't. And I think, you know, there's certain things that we can, if we have awareness that they're essentially a system, and we have awareness within the space of that system, we can use it to our advantage, you know, for the greater good. You know, I truly believe it's like a matrix style system, perhaps, that we're in, you know, but we can have conscious awareness that we're in these systems.
Yes.
And it's not that, you know, I often refer to, like, I don't want to, you know, exit the matrix. I want to be awake in the matrix.
Exactly.
I want to
be awake in the matrix and have a say.
Exactly. I don't want to exit it, because then essentially, like, and at the end of the day, I am the matrix.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So one of the things that I love to do every so often is jump onto TikTok, and my algorithm shows me sort of all the cool stuff. And like, one of the things that I see in the feed all the time is like, are we living in a simulation? And it's funny, because there's a lot of things that I see from these videos that people make that a lot of it actually makes sense to me. I was like, do you know what? Actually, we could perhaps. And then I thought to myself the other day, I'm like, if that is it, like, if this is just a simulation, if all we've been trying to do is trying to find out what life is, if that's the whole idea of life, is to try and find out what it is that we're here for. And if we've cracked the code that it's a simulation, I'm like, I'm actually really disappointed, you know, because I've heard theories that, like, the speed of light is actually the speed in which the simulation loads. And the fact that we haven't yet, you know, got out, like, humans to other planets yet, is because that part of the simulation is not being built yet. Like, there's all of these theories that I'm just like, what? Like, it's mind blowing. And so if we're in a simulation, obviously, I mean, we are sentient beings. This is the thing. But if we think about the illusions that exist in our minds, that, like, an illusion can be, like, completely crumbled in an instant. Right. Okay. And I've had this experience before. Like, you think something to be true and you swear black and blue that it is, then you find out that it's not. And it's like, oh my God, this whole time it was a lie. And it's like, well, what else is there? What else is that? Because you can swear, like, have you ever had an imaginary conversation with someone in your head that didn't actually exist, but you went back and had that conversation with someone, and your body had a full physiological response? Like, you got angry, you're like, raging, right? So, like, it didn't even happen, yet you can have such a response to it. So it could be.
But I mean, that happens, like, even when we have dreams and stuff. And I think that's because our brains are lying to us all the time. Our brains are creating virtual reality constantly. That is just a constant truth. Our brains are lying to us all the time. Although, I mean, having had experiences of, like, intimate truths, like having really had experiences of the oneness, like having, like, just when I just did that healing just now, I will say to you, that wasn't a simulation on any level, because I was deeply connected to the cosmos. Like, there was no separation, and I was really holding this incredible space. So whether our brains are creating a simulation, I don't know that our universe is a simulation. Although sometimes I think maybe the human experiment is like they maybe if it's a simulation, they have to reset the game, and, like, oh wait, they died again, we got to go back, and it's like a choose your own adventure. But
something like that. Do you know what I mean? But
Right,
also
yeah,
like the
I
fact
get it.
that we have, like, they say that deja vu is like it resetting, like it glitching, and it's like doing like a momentary update, which is why we have deja vu, or we have like those synchronistic moments because things are actually aligning up. And I don't want to go into like letting myself believe that that's the be all and end all and getting so sucked into it. It's like, okay, cool. That's a really interesting perspective. And it's probably something I could get on board with. I'm like, oh, okay. But I truly feel that our consciousness and our souls are the sentient
Absolutely.
beings, and we do come together, and the world that is projected that we see through our eyes is perhaps a simulation that is the capacity that our brains can show us. You know, they say that we're only using a certain, and I can't remember what the number is, but it's a small percentage of our brains.
Right,
And
exactly.
perhaps that's all that we can actually comprehend. And what would life be like if we were using the full capacity of our brain? You know, could we see oxygen? Could we see, the web of the matrix? Could we see further than what our current human eyes can see?
Yes.
And it's just I love talking about this.
Believe that's true. I actually believe that's true. And I do think that as we do consciousness work, we're accessing different parts of our brain, and we are accessing different capacities and abilities. And I think if we think about ancient societies who did incredible feats of physics and even just think about the pyramids, right? Those pyramids were built as like transmitters. They were actually transmitters for the divine. So they had capacity that we don't even have access to yet. We haven't caught up to their technology. And I do think it's because they had access to a different level of consciousness. And so we're humans dumbed down for a really, really, really long time. We went into our a collective dark night for 1,000 millennia. And now we're coming back out of it. So it's like I do think that as we go consciousness, we are going to be able to access what colors taste like, and what grass you can what sound grass makes, right? I know that because I've had those experiences, and other people have had those experiences, that there's enough of us now that oh, there's a whole nother level of awareness that we just don't quite have.
Yes. And I think, in the world that we live in, I mean, look at here in Australia, we have fluoride in the water. It's known to calcify the pineal gland, the pesticides and the sprays on all of the food, the fact that, organic food is so expensive. There was actually, I don't think it actually got passed, but there was a call out in Victoria, their state premier wanted to ban people from growing their own fruit and vegetables in their gardens. Oh. It's do you know what I mean? There's a lot of things TV, the radio, all of the things that are, going in to our brains, into being stored in our subconscious mind, when we're, because I've studied theta healing, I've studied hypnotherapy, so I know a lot about the theta brainwave. And when we're in that theta brainwave, we're at our most suggestible. And, what do we do to numb out? We watch TV. What do we see on TV?
Right.
The ads, the movies, the shows, the ways in which there is so much just crap being absorbed into our minds that we end up believing things to be a certain way, which we have essentially done our whole lives until we become conscious, and continuing to be conscious as well. We don't just be conscious, I'm awake to everything now. It is a journey.
Oh, it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job, right? Carolyn May says consciousness is a full-time job, because it's not just you're right. It's not like you attain enlightenment. It's the journey into mastery. And the more you dig, the more there is to dig.
Oh my gosh. When I first sat with my first medicine ceremony, I was just stunned afterwards. I was like, well, fuck, what now? I went in there with questions, and I came out with even more questions than I had answers. And I mean, obviously that's the part of integration, working with plant medicine, is that, you need someone to support you through that what the fuckness, but that's the thing, and it's not just plant medicine. There's so many different ways in which we can reach our own level of awareness and consciousness. It might be through a conversation, or hearing, conversation. People might hear this and be like, whoa, People might attain it through breath work. People might attain it through the state of orgasm, reaching that level of consciousness in the moment and that deep connection with another person. It could be just, walking through a field and like connecting with an animal or a flower, and they're just like, oh my God, I am nature. I am one with all of this, whatever way we get there. Like there's no right and wrong way to do consciousness or spirituality, but there's a lot of things in the world that I truly believe are there. And this is the polarity of the dark and the light. But I truly believe that there are things from the space of, essentially a darkness that is not wanting humans to have that consciousness and that awakening because they're not controllable. When we step outside of, particular health systems and say, this is not the path for me, or I'm not subscribing to the way people work, or I'm not subscribing to eating the foods and the packaging and the fast food and the shit that's around. When I stand in my sovereignty and I make choices for me, I'm not able to be controlled. I'm not.
True. And, Martha Beck did this really cool video. I don't know, maybe a year or so ago. It was not long ago. She did this really cool. She had this demonstration. She said, what's happened is societies have always been hierarchical. There have always been, since she had this pyramid of sugar cubes, right? And this is society. And what happens is the bottom topples comes up and takes the top down and topples it, but they create their own hierarchical society. And she said, what's happening now is consciousness is we're becoming all one. We're recognizing that there is no space. We're becoming this one consciousness. And so she poured this water in, and she said, so the bottom crystals were dissolving first. And she said the people at the top maybe don't know what's going on yet, but they recognize that something's going on. And eventually, by the time it gets to them, now it's just, it's we are all one consciousness, and there's no, there's no, it's not going to be hierarchical anymore because we're all just going to be one consciousness. And when I talk about the upgrade of humanity, that's where we're headed. And I don't know, will we see that in our lifetimes? Who knows, right? But it's coming. We're the beginnings of that age, that stage. So our job is to constantly be doing our own work. That's why I said fierce happiness. Our constant work is to do our own work, our own consciousness, our own shadow when we're triggered, when we're that's ours to heal, because it's ours to heal. And as many people as do that work, that's what spreads the consciousness. It's contagious too.
It's so true, isn't it? What do you think, like the majority of humanity at the moment, where do you think we're missing the point or missing the mark of something? What are we not seeing as a collective?
I think as a collective, there's still the focus of, like, let's say us and them. There's still the out there energy, right? Even when we talk about like they're trying to control us so we can't be conscious, right? Even that language still has the tone of us and them. It still has a little bit of polarity into it.
Yeah, so, still separation, isn't there?
Exactly. And so if it's all one, it's all divine. It's all good. Nothing is wrong. And that's where our work is, really to get to that surrendered place of like, nothing is wrong.
I love even though it feels so wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
I love to sit and stay in the uncomfortable and just be like, and this too.
I see a lot of people spiritually bypassing.
Yes,
a lot of people love lighting. Yeah. Like I see a lot of people love lighting their way out of things instead of doing the shadow work and sitting in the stuff. Do you see that a lot in your work?
Well, by the time my clients get to me, they're usually looking for something. Like my clients, I mean, because of who I am, my clients, they're not allowed to be love and light, because I'm like, it's not, right? So life's going to hand you lemons. You got to figure out how to make lemonade with it. So by the time my clients get to me, they either are ready for that message or they're quickly going to get to that message, because I can't work with them if they want to do McDonald's spirituality. It's just not, I can't do that work. So you got to find somebody else who can. So I don't see it as much in my clients. I see it in like some of the spiritual communities. Like I moderate a group on Facebook called Spiritual Women of New England. And there's a ton of like superficial love and light, live, laugh, love, right? All that, right? So, and so I call myself a happiness coach, and they're like, "Oh, happiness! I love happiness." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, except it's shadow work." But I also have so many of my intimate circle are doing this deep work. Like we're creating a community of people who are really willing to have the really difficult conversations and the painful exploration of like, oh, that's mine too. Right. So I make it a point to surround myself with those people, because I actually, like, again, that's how because we can't do this work alone. It's how we grow.
It's so true, isn't it? Like we absolutely cannot do this work alone. And like, what would you say to people out there that are on this journey and that are feeling really lonely and want to try and find their people, find their soul pod, find the people that are on this wavelength? What would you say to them?
I would say that, honestly, ask, first of all, just like really, truly ask for the guidance because they can't intervene. The divine will, the free will is tantamount, right? That's it. Like they cannot intervene unless we ask them to. So we could ask, help me find my tribe, help me find my group. And I also think to just the openness of wanting that. If you want it, it's already in your field. You just got to right? If you want it, it's already here. Your job is to allow it. So feeling lonely because you're waking up and maybe the people around you aren't, it may be that you find a community, like you and I found each other. I'm Boston, you're in Australia. We found each other through whatever. So like our tribe is there waiting. And so it's first of all asking, and second of all being open to, it may not be the people that are right around you. So you may have to like make some space in order to find the nature outpours a vacuum. So sometimes it's like, right, there's one ends and you have to like wait until the next thing comes in too.
Yes, I always say that to people. I'm like, there will be a space, there will be a gap, and it's going to feel like it's really quiet, and you're like, uh-oh, where is everybody?
Where am I? I'm lost. I'm lonely. I'm terrible.
There's the new people coming in, and they do, and it's so interesting, because this year very much so, like I've held the intention of connecting with more people that speak my language, that understand me, and then I didn't actually think, oh, I'm going to do a podcast to find these people and have these conversations. It literally just started coming to me. It was like, oh yeah, I've been so called to do a podcast for so long. And then I was interviewed on a podcast by someone else. And I'm like, I love this. I love this so much. And I was, really sort of seeing podcasts and listening to them that I was really enjoying. And I'm like, I could do that. And then it was just like, okay, cool. Then I had the equipment. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to connect with all these people. And like, it just happens. Like it never just lands in your lap straight away. There is a gap between, when you put it out there and when things actually start manifesting. But I knew, like, I hold deep faith in anything that I'm, manifesting, that, it is done, it already is done.
It already is. If you want it, I was shown this, I did a sort of a deep dive meditation this summer. I went on a journey for a couple of hours. Like I was gone, and my guides were really showing me what it felt like to want something, which meant it was outside of me, or have something, which meant it was here. And I really got to sort of experience the difference. And they were really clear about showing me the wanting of it means it's still outside of you. So the wanting of it is creating the awareness. I want this. And then the having of it was like, it had to be like almost a conscious choice of allowing myself to feel what it felt like to have it, to be it, to experience it, because that was the only way it came in, because the wanting of it still put it outside of me.
Yes, I actually listened to a book on Audible recently. It's literally called The Having. And it's a beautiful book because it speaks directly into this. It's knowing that not only does it already exist, but what is it that you have already? You know, what is it that you've already, like every single thing, like if we look around us, every single thing that we have around us, we have manifested and brought to life in some way.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't be here if we didn't have the intention of bringing it in.
Right.
You know,
Right.
And so I think we sometimes forget the power that we hold within ourselves to create all that it is that we do desire, because we get so fixated on what we want, as opposed to, you know, it's the things external, exactly what you just said.
Yes. And then we get focused on the what we don't want. Well, I don't want that, right? So it's even harder to get to the what we want. You get to you can shut off what you don't want. Okay, then you can get to what you want. And then you get to the having of that thing that you just have to feel into. And again, what they showed me is I would say I want to feel whatever, abundant, whatever it was, right? And they were like, when did you feel that? So they would they would really make me take a place. And so I was like happy, right? So I had to actively go back in my lifetime of when I felt happy and cultivate that feeling and bring that feeling up into my heart and let it overflow. And they said, marinate in that, focus on that, meditate on that. And so then it was just like, it was like it got to be this like bubble that came up, and I anchored it into my body, so that when I felt anxious or depressed or lack or scarcity or anything, I could bring that bubble back up again, and it became like a Patronus charm. It literally expelled all the Dementors. Like it was a really cool, powerful thing that now I'm working on figuring out how to teach my clients to do that, because it's like you gotta feel it.
Yes. And Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches this as well, you know, when he talks about manifesting, and, you know, it's always going to be about the feeling. It's holding the feeling in our bodies, holding the feeling in our being, because our mind actually doesn't know the difference between, you know, what we've made up and what we're actually experiencing.
Exactly.
You know, which is why I was saying earlier, like you could have a full blown conversation in your head with someone and have the physiological response in your body. Like you get the sweaty palms, you get the racing heart, you get the butterflies. And it hasn't even happened. Your body doesn't actually know the difference.
Right. Which that's why, and your body doesn't know, and your brain is trying to keep you safe. So your brain is, well, okay, this is what we want. Well, okay, we'll go back. We'll find all the data points of like this thing that you don't want.
Yes. Our beautiful little reticular activating systems in the back of our head, the little librarian, I call it, that has all of the pieces of proof and all of the information that she's gathered over all of the time.
All cataloged by date and time, and exactly.
Yes, smart little person. Robin, how is it that people get in touch with you, work with you, be in your field, be in your magic?
I have a Facebook. I have my website is. I kind of have everything on my website. It's phoenix-rising-healings.com. That's where everything is. I have a Facebook page, Phoenix Rising Healings. I'm on all the socials media. I do my own version of podcast on Mondays. On Mondays, 11 Eastern time, Mondays with Robin. And I talk for like 15 or 20 minutes about whatever energy happens to be up right now. And it's like, and then I put those on YouTube. So you can either catch me live on Facebook, but if you're not on Facebook, I put it all on YouTube, and you can just and I have them all cataloged out there. And it just is basically whatever is up right now in this moment. I have, like I said, I'm all over the place. I'm everywhere. Starting in January, I'm going to have a membership site, which is, and I'm going to do a monthly group healing and a monthly meditation, and some other stuff. So then you can sort of access me that way. So it should be up and running by the beginning of January.
Amazing. And that's 2023 for anyone listening to
exactly.
this podcast. Okay, we'll link to all of that in the show notes. I'm super curious, Robin, what is it that inspires you to get up every morning?
Well, my 10-year-old daughter, who is just like this magical, amazing being who masquerades as a human, and this burning desire to like, I know my name, that if every single person could tap into that place of like, you matter, your energy, your light, we need your magic in the world right now. Like if every person could tap that, just know it for 1 minute, that's going to heal. We're going to be able to, that's going to heal the world because there won't be lack and scarcity and fear. That's how we get to this utopian society.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
And to you, what is the meaning of life?
The meaning of life is live it, like be alive, live it. Life is meant to be lived. There's no good, there's no bad. You can't have joy without sadness. You can't have love without pain. Like you need both. And the meaning of life is living it with every ounce of your being.
I love it. That is beautiful. Robin, thank you so much for joining me today. That was an epic conversation. And I know that the listeners are going to either like have to pick up their jaw off the floor. So they might have a little carpet burn on the jaw. And we're dropping and hitting the deck so hard. But thank you so much. I would love to have you back on at some point for another chat. No doubt our listeners are absolutely frothing for this. Thank you to everyone for tuning into this episode of the Enlightened podcast. All of the details that you need will be in the show notes. One more thing from Robin. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I have in March of 2023, my partner and I are doing a retreat, an in-person retreat. We're going to dive into this happiness stuff, consciousness, spirituality. It's going to be an amazing thing. So liveforeverfierce.com, March of 2023. I apologize, but
is that online or is that in person?
It's in person. It's actually in person in Massachusetts. So it might involve travel, but like it's so worth it.
If I could teleport, I would be there.
We'll figure that out. We'll make it work. Sorry.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you for having me, Jen. It's been really awesome.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is Enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.